Hello everybody and welcome to today's video and the first episode of this 4Runner refurbish, refresh, rebuild, whatever you want to call it. I'm Samuel. If you're new to this channel, I work on cars. I don't post a lot of videos about it. I'm just getting back into it. But if you've been around on this channel, you know that I've been building a 1979 Toyota pickup for some time now, and I've provided absolutely no updates on it. But that changes. I'm getting back into filming videos, and I figured it would be great to start on something fresh that we've picked up. So this is a 2006 4Runner V6 limited trim, four-wheel drive that we picked up as a project from some people we know, and they wanted it to go to a good home, and I'm happy to say that it is going to a good home, as it is here now. There are quite a few things it needs. It's sat on op for a couple of years. It got driven a little bit in that time. You can kind of see by how dirty it is that it's been sitting. But the goal with this series is to show you guys, to the best of my ability, how we do everything with this, from whether it's basic mods or cleaning up or repairs to more technical stuff. I don't want it to be like Donut Media where like, all right, we bought this and then we put it on and it's done, right? No. I want to like explain why certain parts are going on, you know, include the technical side on there, but also make it so that the technical info can be digested by both, you know, let's say basic car people that are learning, and then also not be overwhelming for them, and then cater that same info to the more technical and advanced car people that have a more understanding for this. And then not bore them with basic explanation. So I want to find a fine line, a fine balance between it all. Now, before we get into it, I do want to give some background onto who I am and kind of what I do, because I'm not famous by any means. I'm just a guy who likes to work on cars at home in the side yard, and I want to give you a little bit of background both for the basic people and the more technical people, so you can kind of see where my knowledge lands. I'm not an expert by any means. I'm not an ASE certified mechanic. Yeah, I've just kind of learned at home. I took one class at community college here locally, and just got a chance to play with tools like an alignment rack, that sort of thing. But I was already that like deep into like thinking and figuring out, and the interest was already there. So a little bit of info about me. I'm 22. I started my first kind of build at the age of 18. I picked up my first project car in December of 2020. But as a family, we picked up our first project Toyota in July of 2020. My dad really wanted a Land Cruiser for quite some time. We had a Sequoia, we still have a Sequoia, but you know, we have had that for a while, and he wanted a Land Cruiser, and we'd been looking for an 80 series. And so we found an 80 series locally, picked it up. It's a factory triple locked Lexus FCJ80. It's got everything basically done to it for kind of enjoyable touring now. 4 of us can go out and enjoy it with the dog, or 3 of us or 2 of us, that sort of thing. So I learned a lot on that build. It's got 35s and a set of 37s for it, 3-inch lift, front and rear bumpers, winch, some electrical that one of my brothers figured out, you know, and did with like an aux beam box and that sort of thing. So we're pretty hands-on. I learned a lot from my personal build, which is a 1979 Toyota pickup, or also known as a Hilux. I think you can still call it a Hilux without getting yelled at by fanboys. I don't know. I like to call it the Hilux because it genuinely, you know, is. It was before all these models started getting different names in the US. So from that build, I learned a lot. I bought a non-running truck. There's a lot of things wrong with it. The wiring harness was cut up, the engine was like half together. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. As kind of naive as that sounds, it was the truth. And 4 years later, it runs. I mean, I drove it for the first time last December when I kind of buttoned everything together, and boy, was that an experience, put a smile on my face. But from that truck, I've learned a lot. It's cost a lot of money, but I built an engine, learned how to rebuild a transfer case, did it, you know, as much as I could at home. The truck only went to, I think, one place for any work, and that was rust repair, because I didn't know how to weld then, or at least weld very decently then. So that truck taught me a lot, and that's why I'm excited for this project and to share some of my knowledge and hacks and tricks from doing stuff at home, making tools work, figuring it out. I've done a bunch of other car stuff since. I've worked at a wheel company locally, so I got to play around with some, performance cars a little bit and understand how offsets and stuff like that work. So I feel like I have some good knowledge for learning a lot on my own and at home, between helping friends with their trucks and cars and whatever it may be. So enough about me. This 4Runner sat for quite some time, with the mods and stuff. We got it from the previous owners. I had actually have seen this 4Runner for years before we even bought it. I think probably the last 8 to 10 years I've seen this 4Runner around, because it's at an area where we often go as a family, and it was always around. So I've seen it, I've kind of seen the evolution of it, but I've never known what's been done to it or what's been changed or what's been installed, that sort of thing. So we'll start with kind of the exterior condition. It sat outside for 2 years as non-op, so you can see it's still dirty, hasn't been cleaned. It probably got rinsed off a few times, I'm not so sure. It was parked under a tree, which is, you can see a little bit of the result of that. And actually the sunroof has been tilted back and been open for I don't know how long, and there's debris lodged in there, so no question it definitely sat where it sat. The headlights are obviously just killed from the sun, oxidized. The sun has been pretty brutal in California the last 2 or 3 years, so it's not just this vehicle suffering from it. There's a lot of even new cars. What you don't see in front of me is there's a 2019 Tundra that we own, and that has, pretty fresh headlights. The car only has about 60,000 miles on it, but the sun is killing the top half of the headlights already. Granted, they're thinner plastic and that sort of thing, but the sun is pretty abusive. Which you can also see in this area. The rubber seals are pretty messed up in certain aspects around this vehicle, whether that's the rear tailgate, there's cuts and rips in it, or the front grille right here, which is disintegrated basically. It does need help on the exterior. The paint is all right in most places, but there's a door, I think 1 or 2, and these factory fender flares that have clear coat missing, so the clear coat is just worn down and it's down to paint. So we may be considering repainting this, I'm not sure yet, but that's kind of the status on the exterior. Other than that, it's in pretty reasonable shape. It just needs a good wash. The sunroof does need to be taken care of. Like I said, not sure how long it's been open or if things have been leaking into it, and that needs to be sorted out. There are a couple things you can see. The front fog lights are orange. I think the whole housings have been changed. I'm not sure if it's a wrap or like vinyl or an overlay. And then these lights have been added along with this winch. The winch is rated for 10,000 pounds, which is nice to have, and it already comes sitting behind the factory front bumper. But they did kind of make it fit, and there's a cutout here for the release for free spool and whatnot. So there are some mods done. If you've noticed, there's a skid plate on this side. The skid plate is all aluminum. It's from this company. I'll put it somewhere on the screen. Really nice stuff. Somebody did pay a pretty penny to try and do things right here over time and slowly. So it has a full aluminum front skid plate. It has a gas tank skid plate as well, which is also aluminum, and the control arms have aluminum skid plates. So there's a lot of money in just armor here, which is nice. We don't have to spend any money on armor, so that is cool. And not only that, because it's all aluminum, it is a little bit lighter. It is easy to add weight to this vehicle when you start modding it, but it has aluminum plates in great condition, and I couldn't be more excited to have that as a starting baseline. Even if it was just stock with plates, that's really nice to have. Suspension wise, it does have some suspension done. We'll have a look at that more in depth when we start looking underneath the car and having a look at various areas of the frame, checking for rust, that sort of thing. We'll pull off a wheel and have a look. Speaking of wheels and tires, the tires are old. There's some, I don't even know. Let me have a look. These are Hankook, like Dyna Pros, 265 stock size on 18-inch, the sport wheels or the limited wheels. And they are dry rotted, so those are going to sit. They have a date code of 2017. Those are not going to be used. Those are probably one of the last things that'll go on this vehicle, but they're going to sit on for the time being, as we work on various aspects. But those will be excellent burnout material at some point in time. Yeah, that's kind of it for the front end. The mirrors are worn. The paint is kind of cooked on the mirrors, and it'll need some form of spray there. I haven't decided what we want to do paint-wise, but episode 2, we'll kind of have a build list and get that figured out, and there'll be some info there. The interior is kind of in a state of just they left it and kind of just went, it's all right, and just didn't really care. You know, there's no ripped seats or anything like that, but you know, the typical driver bolster is worn. The carpet is pretty gross. The headliner has some marks. The headliner needs to come down anyway because of the sunroof issue. So we will be taking care of that. And I think we've already not 100% like committed in terms of ordering it, but we will be getting new carpet for the interior. That's something we've done on our 80 series Land Cruiser build. And for what the cost is, it's honestly worth it to have fresh carpet. You know, you don't know if a dog's peed in there or animal hair, or, you know, all sorts of things that happen to carpets in cars, whether it got wet and moldy, who knows. Better to just pull it out, get the new carpet, keep the old one, kind of match up the cuts and put a new carpet in. It needs it. It has rock sliders. I'm not sure what kind. They're just a U-bolt mounted to the frame style of rock slider. Again, nice to have. Somebody already paid for it. They might need a refresh, like repaint or respray, whatever. We can take care of that. Not much of an issue. You may have noticed the front sway bar is actually sitting right here. So the previous owner decided to pull the sway bar because the forums had said, oh, you get more flex out of the front end. And he said it didn't really drive all that much different. The sway bar will be going back on because it should be there. And if you really need the flex, just disconnect the links and tuck it up somehow. Not a big deal. There's a box of stuff that came with this car right back there where the ramps are, and then also the rear carpet's rolled up because it was gross. Pulled it up, rolled it up, needs to get cleaned, whatever. So that's what's been done here. I'm excited to have a look underneath and really go in depth and show you guys. I'm gonna use this GoPro here and have it on my head and then point out things while holding a light to hopefully show you what areas you need to be cautious of, kind of what the condition of things are underneath at 211,000 miles, California kept, you know, whether there's rust in the frame, because that was an issue with Toyotas kind of in the early 2000s. Tundra's had a frame recall, even Sequoia's had frame issues. So, you know, this, let's just say, has the potential for it, but we got to see where it stands. Rubber bushings, if they need to be changed, we'll have a look at that. And just the general condition underneath. So let's get this thing jacked up. I'll pull some wheels off and we'll start having a poke around and see where we stand. Ooh. At least they're not rusty. Hubs. Some dead spiders. Normal stuff. And where is our date code? On the inside, maybe. 08 of 17. 8th week of 2017, I think. All right, I've adjusted the camera a little bit so you can see. So let's have a look. Frame, that's nice. That's not terrible. Put some rubbing here. Okay, so that's just offset and I guess tire size. No rubbing on the mud flaps, so looks like the caster was in check for a while. But let's take a look at these cam bolts real quick. This cam bolt here, I don't know if you can see that, is basically not quite maxed, but close. And then if we look at the rear one, which is very hard to see in there, I can see it. That one's also kind of maxed. So let's go from this side. See that? That means the arm is being pushed out. And typically when you lift Toyotas here, after you go over a certain height, this stock upper control arm doesn't cut it. Look at the angle at which it's sitting at. And not only that, you can't get enough adjustment out of the cam bolts at the bottom for the lower control arm to fix any sort of correction based on lift. Once you go up too high and those max out, then you start to gain positive camber, and then you wear this edge of the tire. So if we look at our Tundra here, and I'm referencing this, this is an SPC upper control arm. Granted, there is a spacer lift. Please ignore that. We're looking just at the arm. This will go away one day. Right here, what's adjustable is the upper ball joint. So this slides on a plate, and then you can set where you want your caster and then slide it in and out to get your camber, so you don't get this outer edge tire wear, because the lower cam bolts typically will not be maxed out. That's the caster. The reason the caster's maxed out in the back is so we don't rub the inside of the body mount. These are 35s with an 1.25" spacer, and they clear, right? And we don't rub against the frame, but you can see we've had to mold the front bumper. So an upper arm might be the case. Also, with something like that lifted, if you look down the side of the Tundra, there is a slight camber. There's actually negative 0.5 degrees of camber up front. And I have set it up that way because that's the spec I like. But over here, we can adjust the suspension. This Toytech coilover has a bit of room. Granted, it is pretty crusty. And also, I seem to think this is quite thin for Bilstein. I'm not sure why the bottom of the strut has such a thin, like, rod. Personally, that, like, worries me, but that's just what I'm observing. Again, it's suspension that's already supplied. So these look like they could still be adjusted. I don't have a spanner wrench, but there's room to adjust the suspension higher. It's just the upper arm and the alignment's gonna get whack once that happens, and then we're gonna have, you know, rubbing issues if we go to a bigger tire. So something may need to be adjusted here, but everything's in pretty good shape. Upper ball joint is tired. You can see the grease that came out. This brake clip and this brake line is rather, or sorry, the fitting with threads is rather crusty, so maybe these will get changed to stainless lines or something like that. Brake pads, plenty of life. I say the rotors look really good. They just look like they haven't been used, so that's nice to see. Tie rod boot looks a little greasy over there. This probably needs a good wash. And then if we look down at our lower ball joint, I can see that there's a little rip right there. And then honestly, these are gonna have to come out and just get changed anyway, as a safety precaution. You know, they might not be bad, but they could be bad. And the way you know is if you can wiggle the wheel and all sorts of things. Look, I recommend, if you're unsure, look up a video, or if you just see that your boots are torn and there's a ton of grease here, just change them. But yeah, that's how this is looking. There's a front diff drop. So that's to space the front diff to drop it down a little bit so the CV axles don't get bound up by angle. So imagine they're like this, you know, they can brake under stress, so the diff is lower to compensate for the height, although I don't think this 4Runner is really high enough to do any damage when we look at it. What else? Everything's looking pretty good down here. I mean, there's just your general, like, crustiness going about. Up here in the engine bay, I'm gonna have to tilt the GoPro up a little bit so you guys can see. That appears to be a new fan clutch. That's good. This is remnant of radiator chain. Let's see. Yeah, the radiator's been changed. That is just coolant corrosion eating away at the paint on these cooling pipes. I believe that's for oil, so, or power steering. But yeah, so there's some corrosion in that aspect, and then there's a little bit of paint flake, but not like any deep crazy rust of any kind, so that's good. I mean, this control arm, the cam bolts, a little crustier for sure. Looks like the oil pan has a drain plug installed. Personally, I don't like this. It's gonna be getting reverted to a normal drain plug, but all in all, not so bad over here. There's a few things, but nothing insane, so that's at least good to see. Tie rods look okay, but again, if the boots are worn and there's a lot of grease, probably worth changing. And if you're gonna run bigger tires, change that out anyway. Also looks like the front sway bar went here and that there's a drop block for the height and the lift. Take a look at the body mounts. Oh yeah, crusty. This I plan on going to all polyurethane anyway. There's a little more vibration with that, but the body will be mounted pretty solidly to the frame. So a worthy upgrade, but overall not bad. But you know, your typical bushings. Bushings in here, bushings in there, bushings, you know, over here, and again on the opposite side, all need to go. And they're just worn after this mileage. They look like they've never been changed, and you can see cracking there and whatnot, especially if you start like really poking at things. I pulled the second wheel off. I mean, again, no need to show you that, but we'll have a look in here. Again, ball joint, you can see the cracking there, not so great. There's more rust always on the passenger side of a vehicle, especially left-hand drive, because this is on the edge of the road. This takes the most abuse, so you got to look at it that way. Again, the brake line, little fitting, somebody bled the brakes at some point, I think, and just really didn't do a good job of cleaning up any fluid after or wiping it up. But I was curious to see this, how the body mount is on there and then like the weld is like lower than like this edge. I guess it's not a big deal, but just something interesting that caught my eye pretty quickly without the light too. Here are the body mounts, by the way. Can dig my fingernail into them, nice and gooey. Those will get changed. Looks like we had some rubbing on the frame with the tires, so again, rubbing point, but everything else looks kind of the same on this side. The CV axle has a new boot. The inner one does not have a new boot. It might be hard to see from the GoPro, but it has a lot of cracking in it. It may go at some point. Let's have a look down below. Again, oh yeah, look at that. Lower ball joint, that is toast. You can see the boot is ripped and there's grease in there, but who knows how long that's been ripped, and there's no way this ball joint's any good. It's 100% the original, so that's gotta go. But everything else on this side looks fairly the same, so not too bad. I guess now you can see a little bit of if there's any rust with the light. You can kind of just see it's corroded, but not too big of a deal and not bad. Now let's have a look at the engine bay. We'll get to the interior a little bit. Yes, there we go, hood latch. This always confused me because the gas door on a Sequoia is down here, and the Prado was the same in Europe when I was driving it. I've been driving a Series 120 Prado, which is the same wheelbase and same pretty much vehicle as this is. It's just a Land Cruiser Prado. Think GX 470, but in Europe and the rest of the world. So let's have a look at this engine bay. I've already looked through a little bit of this before. By the way, this is the winch. I do not know what brand it is, but it's got all the cabling running to it, and not very tidy in my opinion. We've got a aftermarket horn on one of the horns at least, but the winch is tucked in. You can see the way they fit it was kind of wiggle, cut the bumper, and ignore the front clips. I don't actually mind this. Front bumper needs to go anyway at some point, but if you're gonna do this, zip ties work better than these stupid things. AC Delco battery, that's pretty nice. Just simple, and then we've got some sort of added fuse box in here. So again, I am not a fan of when people add their own electrical and don't keep it tidy. There are some LEDs in the headlights. I can see that's different, and I've turned the headlights on before, and there you go, you can see a brand of LED in there. What else? New filter. My dad changed the oil and put a new filter on. It's nice to have a filter from the top of the engine. Thermostat has been changed because it wouldn't be this grimy, and there are clearly new hoses on there, so we know that's been taken care of. Factory lines, not hard, not quite soft, still good, especially these vacuum lines feel pretty good. Brake fluid is good. Again, a little bit of just normal kind of corrosion and stuff around there. These holes are corroded. They're not used for anything, but that's kind of interesting. It's just dirty. The winch is in here from testing, or the cable, so don't bother with that. And then looks like we got a big fuse, inline fuse, probably for the stereo and the amp that's inside. So I don't know how to open this fuse box, but let's see. It's got to be something simple. I don't know, doesn't matter. We'll have a look at that at some point, but we know it's there in aftermarket, so likely anything aftermarket I'd personally like to remove and get out of the way and take care of all the other issues and then add things back better. Alternator still has the Denso mark on it. I don't know if it's ever been changed based on kind of the crustiness of the aluminum around everything. I don't think so. So not bad. What else here? Let's have a look, have a look. There's so much room in here. Turn signal bulb, just hanging out. All right. You can see more of the LEDs. Generally pretty clean, and yeah, not much to complain about here. You can just see they ran the wire through the grommet. That's all right. Engine bay just needs a good clean. Exhaust looks good. The studs are tired. I don't think there's a cracked header, but there's a potential for that kind of stuff to go on at a certain mileage, so just got to keep an eye out for that. Air filter, which I've already checked, is clean. That's easy to look through. And then, like I said earlier, engine oil was changed, so not looking too shabby under the hood. Power steering seems to be at the cold minimum. Probably could use a flush at some point. I suspect the rack is original. And if we look down there, it is going to be quite hard for you guys to see. I'm going to try and shove the light there. Let's see if I can get to it. Oh, I don't know how you're going to see this, but right down where my hand is, straight down by the low side of the AC condenser line, is there's some grease down there. Looks like maybe they have oil leak somewhere. Oh, there we go. I'm going to actually show you. There we go. It's pretty grimy in there. Let me see if I can make it brighter for you guys. There we go. This might help. All right, let's shine a light in there. Yeah, grimy. So there's something leaking. We've got to figure out what that is. Maybe it's the timing cover, maybe it's not. It's also present over here. Should be taken care of. And then also the power steering, or the steering rack. See those bushings? At the very top, they're cracked. Those are toast. Those could be changed to polyurethane, so I recommend that. We'll take care of that. It just looks like some coolant, antifreeze and whatnot got down here and corroded up some of these little clips and stuff, so not too shabby, but yeah, everything else looks pretty reasonable. But yeah, this oil thing, I don't like when things leak, so I have to figure out what that is. Not terrible overall. So personally, once we find the leak, we just, you know, new gasket, new seal, whatever it takes to fix it, and just solve it. Let's take a look a little bit further down. Electronic front diff actuator. That's what this unit is. Oil pan doesn't appear to be leaking anywhere, so good. So maybe it's just the underneath part we're having a leak with. And then underneath, transmission. I know we didn't go under here earlier. Cat bolts are good. Those usually get pretty crusty at some point in time. Transmission is not leaking anywhere. That's nice. This is the same 5-speed out of like the Sequoia or GX or LX or Land Cruiser. The A750F, I believe. So, or yeah, so that's nice. Transmission mount looks in good shape, but again, I don't know. More further investigation will be needed. Could be a little crusty, but I'm figuring the engine mounts, which are right there, that's the bottom of it, probably need more help at this mileage. I can see with my eyes right now, and I'll try and zoom in on the GoPro with it, that they are crusty, so they're probably tired and should be changed. Starter looks good. It's functioning perfect, so those kind of just go when they go. But everything's looking good. I mean, front drive shaft probably needs some grease. just general items, right? So yeah, not so bad. Things look good for the most part under here. So like I said, can't complain for the price we got this, and then in the condition it's in. I mean, yeah, you'd be hard pressed to find another one for the price that's not in, you know, shit shape. So yes, there are things like this to correct, but those are small things. So, but it's been taken care of. So yeah, looks like mechanically it's doing pretty good. Let's have a look further down the line. Under here, not so bad. Again, this is kind of just surface stuff that can get cleaned up. Not a big deal. Lines look pretty good. The body still has all of its, you know, glue and sealant, so that's looking nice. Crossover pipe looks okay. The U-joints look okay. Again, they need to be checked for play. This is like some sort of vibration mount thing off the transfer case. I don't know the exact term for it, but probably worth having a look at. This connector could have been taped up instead of just hanging to get corroded by water, but it's there, so that's something I'll have to look into. Again, here's that nice aluminum skid plate underneath for the fuel tank. That's quite nice, so that's looking good. The exhaust looks pretty reasonable. The hangers look good, and then not only that, the flanges. Obviously the crossover pipe is going to have the worst of it. It's the same with the Sequoias. But this side looks like you could remove it without really worrying too much about stripping or dealing with rust. So pretty pleased so far underneath with the shape here. Just needs a little cleanup and a little spraying here and there. No big deal if you want to preserve it. Let's have a look at the back more so. Okay, white knuckle off-road. Now we have an answer to that. Control arm, trailing arms, whatever you want to call it for the rear. These bushings are usually shot. I would change those. Same with the body mount. It looks like some homemade DIY sway bar link for the rear. Those are likely shot as well. I would change all of the rubber there. Again, check things like brake pad life. I'm not too concerned right now. I haven't seen what kind of pad life is in there, but doesn't matter. It might be something I need to change. Rear axle looks good. I've been told by the previous owner that the rear diff was rebuilt at some point. I'm not sure why, but since these are 8-inch housings, I'm not surprised. For a vehicle of this size, it really should be the 8.2 out of the FJ Cruiser or something else, because the Hilux here also has 8-inch diffs. There's no front drive shaft in that right now because it needs to be a flip diff, but that just tells you if this vehicle has 8-inch and this has it and it's, you know, double the weight of that, maybe it wasn't such a good idea from Toyota factory. But the axle housing itself looks pretty good. Exhaust, again, not really any rust to complain about. It's all just surface. As we look lower, panhard bar, the bracket's a little crusty. There's just some, you know, general crustiness about it down here, especially if somebody didn't do a whole bunch of undercarriage washing. So it's a bummer I can't read what the sticker is, but that's all right. The Toy Tech springs, we've got some Bilstein rear shocks. Let's see if we got a part number in there. 33-187174. These are Bilstein 5100 series. These are nice, so those are good. Again, everything's looking nice. The exhaust is really not crusty at all. Like I said earlier, all the body like sealant and stuff is good. Spare tire will need to come down. Looks like it's also sport edition wheel, so it says 18 by 7.5, so that's good. And then what else? Rust wise, we're pretty clear under here. Not bad. Let's have a look at the interior. So doors open, JBL sound. There's the driver's seat. I'm gonna go ahead and put the GoPro back on my head. There we go. All right, so the interior, got all of our goodies here. Let's see, somebody mentioned, I think my dad, yep, he mentioned this. It's like a speedo calibrator for bigger tires. I just see a bunch of wires there in the mess and like a fuse tap, and so things like that bother me. that is gonna go as soon as I figure out or take care of the interior. This stuff is unnecessary, and especially if somebody else has wired it, like stereo shops or something, if it's that bad of a job, I'm not interested. So all this will come down and we'll have a peek. There was tape over the TPMS light, which I understand because all of our Toyotas have TPMS blinking, and honestly we don't care because we check our own tire pressure. But he used duct tape, and that needs to get polished. That's just, yeah, if you're gonna use tape, buy some like cameraman tape, gaff tape is what they call it. There you go. That's what I use for when I do my camera work. But steering wheel needs a good clean. Yeah, you can see just grime and stuff everywhere. Same with the seat. I mean, look at that. Carpet. We'll pull the mat up over here. There you go. That's probably enough of an indication to tell you. And then there was just some Velcro for controls and spilled drinks and all sorts of stuff. So I'm gonna hop in, and once I can get over this, we got some paperwork. There were some notes on the manual. Gonna leave that there. Shifter's gross. That's from the front skid plate. Don't worry about that. But these are the old style switches I was talking about in the beginning for like fog lights and stuff. So it presses and then it kind of clicks back up. So I don't think it works. It's disgusting in here. Again, another cigarette lighter that needs to be cleaned. Cup holders. Yeah, so it needs a good clean. There's the single DIN radio. That I'm not a fan of. I'd rather just do a proper double DIN. You can get CarPlay, you can get whatever. Looks like this vent has has had not a good time over here. Something has happened, so might need to check into that. It's not really affecting a whole lot, but it'd be nice if it was all synchronous. It looks like it just needs to slip back into its little connector place just from right now. And then somebody tried to glue something on top of this dash speaker. That looks horrible, and that needs to get cleaned really bad. Who knows if it'll come out. The little tray, again, gross. Inside there, gross. There's a spare fuse and I guess a 3.5 millimeter jack. So that's kind of that for the interior. Again, it just needs some help. Passenger seat's better than the driver, but then again, all bolsters get worn from getting in and out. So there we go. I'll shut the door. Let's have a look here. Rear seats, let's see the carpet. Yeah, carpet needs to go. This needs to go back underneath somehow. Again, just needs a good clean. There's dog hair and all sorts of stuff. So I didn't know these come up, but they do. Cool feature. Again, cleaning, cleaning, cleaning. Lots of cleaning to happen here. So that's the back seat. Rear bumper. And then here's the shelf. The shelf is gross. The carpet is gross. Compressor came with it. Looks like all the accessories are here. There's some old duct tape and the washer fluid stuff, I believe. And just some bolts and pieces from some of the other projects already. But yeah, as you can see, it needs a nice cleaning. So that's kind of it for the interior. One last thing you can consider when looking at these are the door jambs and the seals, right? Check the seals, see if there's any rips or water or that sort of thing, like marks. This one's pretty clean. I don't see a sign of a lot of abuse. If these get like chipped, or you can find rust sometimes. If you live in a rusty or snowy area, that water can shoot up between the seal if the seal's bad. So do check for things like that. Again, edges of doors and stuff behind panels will tell you a lot more about your shape, especially if there's plastic cladding, like this kind of cladding. This kind of cladding, right? So just checking for stuff like that and seeing how clean are these door jambs, right? They're pretty clean. So if you were concerned, they might have some other areas of issue here, but all in all, looking pretty good. All right, so there you have it. There's kind of my post pickup inspection of the 4Runner. I'd say mechanically it's very good. There's things that are just tired. Rubber in any suspension components, of course, are going to be old and crusty and needing replacing. But the engine bay is good. You'll have to take my word on it. In terms of driving and shifting, the transmission feels good. I have driven the 5-speed, the same 5-speed auto in the Sequoia for a long time, and I know it's kind of nuances, and so it feels the same here. It feels good. The engine sounds really good on startup. There's no issues. Again, it has fresh oil in it right now, but there's probably going to be a point where when we start getting this on the road, we will take care of that oil, drain it out sooner if it's been sitting, you know, like this car has. Put a little bit of sea foam before the next oil change, that sort of thing. We'll go over that in a different video. But yeah, there's a little insight underneath. You know, the frame is clean, which is the most important part. That's kind of the beating heart of a vehicle, besides the engine and the transmission, the frame, right? That's what's holding it all together. So that's good. You know, we've got some light issues to deal with that I've told you about. I haven't shown you, but I can tell you that they're not working, and we'll go over that when we start doing electrical diagnosis. So yeah, what else can I say? You know, the sunroof, I wasn't gonna move that for you guys. I guess I kind of forgot to show the headliner. Let me take this filter off. There you go. Headliner's not so beat. With the sunroof, there's just crustiness, so there's that. But overall, let me know what you think. I'm curious to see what you guys think in the comments of the condition, what you would rate this as, if anything I'm saying matches up with what you think from what you've seen, and let me know. I'm curious to get some feedback and see how things are, and hopefully respond to some of that in the next video and go over kind of the build plans for this, see where it's gonna lay, and really go from there. Because from what I've seen, and this is, like I said, this is really my first time digging into the underside and looking at things. The condition's quite good, and what can I complain? There's really no rust. You know, it's not like a car from one of the Rust Belt states. It would be completely destroyed. This is a great base to build off of, and that's what we will do. So if you like this video, please give it a like, you know, do the whole comment thing, subscribe if you want, and share it to maybe other friends building a 4th gen or curious about some of this info, what to look at and what to see, because some of this info really does apply to generally all cars, but a lot of Toyotas, you know, it's checking the frame, checking the underside, what are the state of like bushings, right? That gives away how much a car was driven and maybe how hard it was driven. And if you get maintenance history too, that's also a good determination of what's going on. So this car was maintained. There's some paperwork with it. He was very particular with his oil changes, provided a filter, and the oil he's been using, Mobil 1. So I trust at that point it's in good hands. And you know, the way he's taking care of his mods, it shows clearly that he wanted to take care of this vehicle. So shout out to the previous owner. Thank you. And I'll see you guys in the next one, where we go over the build plans, list out kind of what I found, what is wrong, kind of prices for that, things that should be changed, you know, like the ball joints and whatnot, and just a little more in-depth overview of what the initial cost is to kind of keep this up and bring it back on the road, and then, you know, the additional cost of doing, you know, the mods like the bumper, or, you know, any other modifications we think of, like bigger wheels or tires, just tires, you know, maybe, you know, different set of wheels, that sort of thing, all the costs, so, and the build plan. So stay tuned. Thanks again for watching.